Well, good morning, everyone. We are deep into our study of James and really only have one more class on the textual part of James. And I'm gonna wait to the end of class because I'm going to ask a question, take a poll real quickly. What I probably am planning on doing, even though our textual study was just planned through this Wednesday, today and tomorrow, Wednesday's class, next weekend is Labor Day weekend, and I really didn't want to start the next class, which is going to be on Proverbs on a day where it's a holiday weekend. So I think I want to poll everyone at the end and see who's going to be in town, who's not. So I'm thinking about next Sunday as doing a review of James. So anyway, you can't get too much James. There's a lot there. So, well, let's start with a prayer. And Zachary, would you lead our thoughts, please?
Our dear Father in heaven, you are so good and so gracious to us. And you're worthy of all our praise and all the glory and honor that we can give you. We thank you for the time that we have this morning to gather here with your people and to study your word, to delve into the book of James and to learn what you would have us to understand from that. Help us to diligently seek your word and your wisdom, and help us to take the things that we learn, to apply those things to our daily lives, that we may become better, stronger, and more faithful Christians in your sight. And as you would be with Philip as he's leading us in this class, that he may present his material and guide the discussion in a way that is easy to understand and beneficial for all of us. And we thank you most of all for sending your son Jesus to die upon the cross, to give us the hope of being with you in heaven one day. It's in his name that we pray.
Amen. So take a look at this diagram that we've been using to look at the organization and the contents of the book of James. Now, what's the mentality that we have seen in the book of James that he's been dealing with in the last two sections that we've studied, last Wednesday and last Sunday? So what's the mentality that he's addressing at the end of chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4? Being too friendly with and too much like what? The world. Like that which is below. The wisdom from below and having a friendship with the world. So as you look at this diagram, you can see that he's been focused on purity in a defiled world. And really when we're looking at James' definition of that, that's broad there. We're not just talking about, not having bad language and not having sexual morality, which would be included in that, but more broadly, not defiled by the world, but pure in Christ. And all that he's been saying at the end of chapter 3 and beginning of chapter 4 would fall into that category. So, and as James would be quick to remind us, this is more than just a mentality. There are actions connected to this mentality. So that's an important part to keep in mind. And now we come to chapter 4, the end of chapter 4, and we're going to look at the beginning of chapter 5. And look how that these things are tied together. Look at chapter 4, verse 13, and chapter 5, verse 1. Those are the two sections we plan to cover today. What do they have in common? 4:13 and 5:1.
First two words.
First three words. Come now you. Come now you. What does that mean? Come now you rich, or come now you who say? What's he communicating there? What kind of device is that as he's writing? What kind of writing device is that? Come now you.
It's almost like he's calling them out.
That's what we would say today. He's calling them out. That's exactly what he's doing. I hadn't thought about that. Thank you very much. That's nowhere in my notes. Vince and I did not rehearse that. That's a great way to you're a hip guy. You're up with the kitty talk, right? I mean, you really are, man. So, yeah, it's calling someone out. I mean, it's really in a way what's happening here. And isn't it interesting to combine that with how many times he has said brothers, which is a term of endearment, an affectionate term, a term of equality. And so now this is a little bit edgier. This is a little bit more confrontational, which tells us something that he's dealing with some very serious attitudes here. And actually what he's doing, this is all connected to what's been happening since 3:13. He's addressing thinking like the world and living like the world. And he gets real specific here in these two sections. Okay, so let's look here at the first one in James chapter 4, verses 13 to 17. Rick, can you read those verses for us, please?
Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we should go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin.
All right, thank you. Is James condemning making plans?
Not at all.
What is he condemning?
Making plans without the recognition or without God.
Okay, without factoring in God, yeah.
Presumption.
Presumption, yeah. Presumption that what?
You will live forever.
First of all, that tomorrow you're talking about you're going to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first presumption there. And then even if you do live, how that day is going to unfold, I mean, and so this is the mentality that you think you know what's going to happen in the future, and associated with it, you control it. Tomorrow's going to come. I'm going to be alive. I'm going to be able to go to that city, and I'm going to do this and this and this, and this is what's going to happen. There's a difference between making a plan, like, yeah, we plan to go to that city tomorrow and do business. That's understandable. Jesus said to his disciples at one point, we must go on to the next village. We got to keep preaching the kingdom. I mean, he had plans. Paul had plans. Paul wrote about his plans. Read Romans chapter 15 and 16. There's a difference in that, in thinking that you know exactly what's going to happen and that the future is going to unfold like you think it's going to unfold, and that you're going to be in that future even. That whole idea. It's that kind of thinking, and that is a worldly way of thinking. So it's the worldly view. So how are we to view things? So think about three things with me. First of all, how are we to view the future? Let's get a couple of references here, and this is a little bit anticipation of the Proverbs class. Proverbs 27:1. Wes, will you flip over there and have that ready? And then Ray Conies, will you look to Luke 12:16 to 21, which is Jesus' quick little parable there about the rich farmer. And let these complement what James is saying about the future. And note how that Proverbs 27:1 is a similar statement in its own way, but that tells us that James and Proverbs have a lot of similar kind of topics in them. Go ahead, what's that say? 27:1.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I may have said it. 27:1 Proverbs, yeah. 27:1.
Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth.
Okay, that's a great compliment to James 4:13 on there. Don't boast about it. James even talks about boasting, doesn't he, in verse 16? All right, the parable of the rich fool there, farmer, Ray, this is Luke 12:16 to 21.
And he told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do, for I have nowhere to store my crops? And he said, I will do this, I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, fool, This night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God.
All right, thank you. Actually, that's a great parable for this whole section we're studying today, into chapter 4 and beginning of chapter 5 even. What's the big lesson here from those passages as they complement James here? How should we view the future?
Uncertain.
Uncertain. Let's build on that. It's uncertain. What else would you say about it?
We really can't control it.
Can't control it.
It's the Lord's, it's in the Lord's hands.
It's in the Lord's
It's His
hands.
will.
I mean, when he says there, instead, you ought to say, verse 15. Here he's teaching the mentality, if the Lord wills. And understand too, it's okay to say that. I said it this morning. It's okay to say it, you know, we'll do that tomorrow if the Lord wills. It's okay to say that. However, this is more than just something we say, it's how we think. And we may not even verbalize it, but it affects the way we look at things.
I think sometimes we're afraid to say something to a brother without saying if the Lord wills, thinking they might think we're being presumptuous.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so but it's not got to always be hanging there in their thinking, doesn't it? Why is that hard for humans, that we view the future as uncertain? That's the reality of it. Why is that hard?
I believe, I mean, again, he's going to be talking about those who are rich, those who have money. I think money breeds that kind of arrogance that you can control things.
Control.
And again, like he's saying about going and we're going to do business, that, oh yeah, this is going to be the business, and it's all going to turn out good for me.
Yeah.
I think wealth tends, and again, it's the way of the world,
Yeah.
tends to make you feel that confident.
Yes.
I control my future, and I
Yes.
can control circumstances.
Right.
I don't care how wealthy you are, you don't.
Yeah. And these two sections are self-standing, but you're exactly, Vince, they are connected. But they're self-standing, but they're connected. They really are. And if you think about how an individual can do that, think about a culture, a prosperous culture, of which the American culture is the most prosperous ever in human history. I'll give you the evidence. Tons of it. Can you imagine what that does to a culture? I really think that was, well, I don't want to get off too far afield. I think what happened last year with the pandemic, I think the biggest shock to most Americans are like, well, why isn't that store open? Why can't I get this shipped to me overnight? I mean, it's just that my life should not be disrupted because we should have control of this. And there are certain things that are beyond our control, like pandemics. So, Rick, you ever hint?
Well, I was going to say, to admit that the future is uncertain is an acknowledgement that we are not.
Yeah, it's a humble statement. Yeah, exactly.
For the atheist, that's challenging, or the person who doesn't believe.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Throwing a proverb in here, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths.
All right, straight your paths, that's your future. Yeah, very good. But as uncertain and troubling as that fact is, the future is uncertain. Is there a blessing there?
It leads us to trust God.
Okay. It builds trust in us for God. Where you going?
Prayer.
Okay. Be prepared in case tomorrow doesn't come, or it doesn't happen like I thought it would. I mean, think about how much mental anguish people have, how much psychological burdens they have, because the next day doesn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out. And the ability to cope when it doesn't is increased when we realize it may not work out that way. So I'll adjust.
Yeah, humans are full of insecurities. It's fundamental to be human because we don't know children especially, if they don't know what's going to happen the next day and things are not the same, they get very insecure about their lives. That's why divorce is so awful for children because they thought mom and dad were gonna be there forever. And then there's a divorce and, you know, one of them is gone and that kind of thing. So it's, the lesson, it seems like among these other things is that it's true that life on earth is unpredictable. And if you don't have your hand in the hand of the man that steals the water, that controls everything, then you are going to be insecure because there's no way not to be. But if you're clinging to something that's eternal, to a creator who knows, who actually knows the future, who has all knowledge, has all power, then you have a reason to feel secure being a human being.